Hello everyone, and welcome to the first video of our April rendition of art journaling class. And I'm so excited to bring you these videos. In this one, we're going to be doing some heavy color and mark making, and we'll be doing some stenciling and stamping to create this certainly one-of-a-kind page. The girls in the class had a lot of fun with it. I'm going to start out by showing you some tools. These are brayers, and I didn't actually end up using those. These are spatulas and paintbrushes, a palette knife that I like to have on hand. And then these are just some different kinds of paints, and they'll all work. Generally, acrylic paints and colors go really well together, and they'll work. The first set was craft paint, and then there's Blick acrylic. This one is Art Anthology here. And this is an acrylic-based product, and I think theirs is sort of more like a tinted gel medium, and I'll get more info on that later, but I really love the color of this, and this, the consistency is really great, and I was just using a Catalyst spatula for that. It's a Princeton Catalyst is what they're called, but it's like a silicone-topped spatula. And then here, this is an Unwell Studio stencil and a baby wipe, and I'm just wiping out the paint color. And you can see there at the end, there's some paint on the back of the stencil. So then I'm also stamping with it so that there's no paint waste. And especially in this technique or this kind of page, the more the better. So, and here now I'm just going along the top and the side. And I'll do the same thing. The Unwell Studio stencil, wipe it out with the baby wipe, and then stamp it down again to transfer some of that extra paint. And it creates a really fun texture in there. Oh, and this stencil is chunky circles, and I did realize that I didn't put that in the Unwell Studio web store, so that will be there soon in our online store. Just giving everything a heat dry. It really helps to have a dryer of some sort. This is the Ranger craft gun, and then I have a couple Doris ones, and you can use a blow dryer and things like that. But it just really helps to have those to be able to keep moving forward and not waiting for all your paint to dry. Now this is the Studio Blick acrylic, and I love this. It's almost heavy bodied. It's not labeled like that, but it has this really great consistency to it. And I'm just taking the stencil where I had wiped away circles and adding in some color to keep the pattern repetitive. And because my Art Anthology paint was dry before I picked up my Studio acrylic, my Blick acrylic, the colors aren't mixing. So that's important. That's something you should realize, or something I want to let you know. Acrylic paints, if one is dry, you can layer the other directly on top of it. But watercolors, they don't work the same because they're water reactive. So when you put wet paint down on dry paint, it reconstitutes the wet paint underneath. But that won't happen with acrylic. Now, whoops, sorry about that. My little guy came in there. As I was saying, let's see, reconstituting. Watercolor will reconstitute because it's wet when you put it back down on top of itself. But acrylics won't do that. And oils, they take a really long time to dry, like months and months. So those you'll have a really long working time with. And I don't know if I'll ever actually get into oils in art journaling, just because then you really can't work on top of it. But I do want to say, so I've got some magenta acrylic down, and then I've done some blue too. And I put down the magenta, and then I put down the blue and overlap the two. And you can see now, because the paint is wet, the colors have started to mix to create this really gorgeous purple color. Okay? And then here we go, just drawing again. And I do apologize that the drawing sometimes gets a little tedious or monotonous, but it's got to be done. And now, depending on if you're going to keep using the same stencil and start bringing in other colors, you may want to wipe it. I don't always do that, but this time I did because I'm moving from magenta and purple into green and blue. And I didn't want the magenta to mix with the green, because if you stick with color theory, then those are not going to make very pretty colors. Well, sorry about being off camera here. there. And I don't worry also about filling in every circle completely because I really enjoy the texture that happens when paint dips down into a stencil and then kind of gets stuck against the edge. I love that. And now I'm getting out a fourth color. And you notice some of them are wet while I'm still working on them, and some of them are dry, and it's really just for an effect. And you as an artist should certainly just kind of experiment and find out which ones you like and which ones you don't, and how often you like wet on wet or dry, wet on dry. You can see how great those yellows and greens are blending together. And I did overlap the yellow onto the pink because yellow and pink or yellow and red will make orange. But green and red, as far as color theory goes, when they're wet and they mix, then they'll make a brown, kind of muddy, kind of grayish color. Okay? And I'm not covering the entire page. I had intended to leave white space, but I always leave white space. So as we work a little bit further, I do cover the entire thing just with something else, not with acrylic paints. And now you can see I have used the craft paint, the Blick acrylic paint, and the art anthology paint. And it's all blending beautifully and working really well together. And they are different consistencies, and some are thicker and some are thinner. And that also is just going to be a personal preference sort of thing. If you like it, you do, and if you don't, you don't. And that's fine because there are so many types of paints in so many consistencies, and you can just buy what you like. And I didn't even worry that all my circles didn't line up or didn't cross over perfectly. We're really just creating texture and having fun with color at this point. And now I've got a spray bottle, and I'm spraying the entire thing down. And the base is watercolor paper. I did forget to mention that at the beginning. I'm very sorry about that. And now I'm going to spray it down with Tim Holtz Distress Stain sprays. And they are water reactive, okay? So I'm putting the colors generally where I put the colors originally. And in class, those of you who were in class, I realized we didn't do this, and that's because I had forgotten the sealer, because these are water reactive. We wouldn't have been able to work on top of them very easily. So in class, we made an acrylic glaze, and I will do an extra video that will just be free on YouTube. You can find that here soon. I'll put it at the same time I put these up. And that'll just go over what we had done in class to mimic this effect. And it's great because this one is water reactive. So after this, I'll have to seal it, and then I'll be able to continue working on top of it. But if you make an acrylic glaze, like in the other video, you don't. Once acrylic's dry, it's dry, permanent, and you can keep working on top of it. So certainly look out for that video, and I'll try to link to that one in the comment section, okay? In the info section. And then I let everything sit, and you can see it kind of matted out where everything got matte. And now I've sprayed it. I had gloss sitting close by, and now everything's a little bit glossy. And it's actually kind of cool because it turns my matte finish paint into a shiny surface. And just heat that up. Be careful if you do this, because those acrylic sealers and stuff, if they get too hot, they can really start creating some fumes, okay? So if you're going to do this, just keep your gun moving, moving, moving. And this is the Crafter's Workshop stencil, I believe. It's either the Crafter's Workshop or Stencil Girl, but it is a stencil. And I was trying to put some really thin paint through it, and you can see my stencil keeps coming up, and so my paint started to move around underneath, and I wasn't really that impressed. It's not the stencil or the paint, it was just my application. So that is down there, but I was gonna say I actually ended up wiping it off, and I will try again, and I'm just not having a good day today with that stencil, so I put a little in and then I end up not even really paying that much attention to it, and I'll actually cover it up with something else later. And stencils, just like paint, it all comes in different ways. Stencils are different thicknesses and different sizes and different types of plastic, and some are frosted, some are clear. Now I'm going to get out some acrylic paint and create these little paint swirls, and I'm keeping them close to their color family, but I want them to show up. So I'm doing the turquoise one, overlapping the blue and the yellow and the green. And I'll mix in a little bit of this lime green. I really love that color. And I love the teal kind of turquoise from Blick too. And so I put down the base color, and then I use my finger to spread around the family. It's in the same color family, remember? All right, so, and here we go with green and yellow on top of the yellow and orange. So I want them to stick out so you can see them. They don't just blend into the background, but they are close to where they would be if we had followed our rainbow, our Roy G. Biv, which is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And I put down 3, and I say this a lot, especially to the art journaling class. If you're new to like sort of this abstract-y type style of stuff, or even when you're doing scrapbooking or card making and stuff, your subconscious really, really enjoys, well, I was going to say that, and then here's a 4th one. Anyways, your subconscious really enjoys odd numbers, because even numbers are pretty unnatural and they don't occur that often in nature. So you're just normally drawn to things that end in 3s or 5s or even 1s, although 1 tends to look a little odd in general. But yeah, if you can count it, like once you start getting towards 10 and stuff, then you don't really need to worry about it as much. And it helps also if a few go off the edge of the page, so then they're not full ones, and they're really just for consistency or cohesion. And now I'm going to do a little stamping, and this is with a roller stamp by American Crafts and some some Ranger archival ink. And this is one of my favorite stamps that I designed for Viva Las Vegas stamps. It's so simple and so perfect. I love the length of it and the repeating pattern of these little chevron lines. And most of the stamps that I have from VLVS are clean cushioned, and so then like here I'm putting the handwriting circles on an acrylic block and stamping with those. But some of my really ultimate favorites, sometimes I get wood mounted. And I'm using archival ink because it's permanent once it dries, and that's really important, okay? And then this is a little bottle. It has a pretty wide opening on it, and it has golden fluid acrylic in it and airbrush medium, about 50-50. And I use it to create some acrylic splatters, black in the background. A really great way to kind of tone down some of the brightness that's happening. Same with the stamping. Now we've done all of our color portions, and from here on out, it's just black and white. Stamping, mark making, splattering. Here's some Prima heavy gesso in black. It is heavy. I'm actually really impressed by the heaviness of this black gesso, because it seems like often enough black gessos don't come in a heavy version, and this one has some nice body to it. Here are some mark making tools. Those ones were the round ones. And now I'm just dipping some things. Mark making tools are anything, okay? And I'll do a separate video on the mark making tools as well and go over some of my favorites. But they're any tools that you can use. It's similar to stamping, but they don't have as specific images. They're more about patterns, repeatable patterns. All right, so definitely check out that mark making video, and I'll show you some of my favorite tools for that. But that's what I'm doing now, is making marks in black acrylic paint, and you can use buttons and spools for some round ones. Lids make a really great one, and repeating patterns are awesome when you're mark making, and they're good for the soul. more buttons they're a little bit bigger and they have a heavier lip to them. So a bigger surface to paper area. And here, this is a piece of chipboard. I also have, I have a box for round mark makers and then a box for other mark makers. And because circles are really hard to make, they're not naturally occurring. So they're all handmade, or man-made, I should say. So that was a piece of chipboard from Untitled Studio in the grid style. And then here, I got this out of the kitchen section at the dollar store, but it's like a Pillsbury scraper, like for dough and that kind of stuff. And I just make straight lines with it. Very cool. And it has kind of a big lip, so that's nice too, because sometimes I find that if I try to do it with a palette knife, I get globs of paint instead of a line of paint, because they're so thin and the paint just builds up. And now this time, so before I attached my stamp to an acrylic block, but now I don't want a perfect stamp. I just want the texture of this like fun little handwriting that I got from Viva Las Vegas Stamps. I just got this one last week. And I'll try and put links to all of that stuff. This is the Studio Blick Gesso. And so usually in paint companies, there's 3 versions. There's like students or studio, and then there's artist, which would kind of be the mid-grade, and then there's professional, which you would think artist would be the mid-grade, but professional is actually usually you would think artist would be the high end, but usually it's professional. And so this is the studio grade, which makes it the cheapest, but I love it the best. It's got this great thick consistency, and I like thick paint because if I need it thinner, then I can just add water to it. So I did a little mark making like I had done before with round and with the spatula, the Pillsbury spatula, and doing straight lines. And now I'm scraping some of that heavy gesso across the top. It's kind of like dry brushing. I'm not using a ton. I'm just putting a little bit on my spatula and scraping it across the top so that all the raised edges from some of the paint and mark making we've done is picking up. Okay, so it's kind of like highlighting the texture that we've already done. And then giving everything a heat dry. So now you can start to see we had this really great, bright, bold background, and we're kind of muting it out, or maybe just intensifying it a different way with some shadows and highlights and dark mark making and light mark making. And these are the Uniposcas or Poscas, or who knows how you say it till the creator says it, or you see a commercial, paint pens. And I bought these on Amazon, and they come directly from Japan. I got the entire pack for like $27, including shipping, but it was like a 6-week wait, but it's fully worth it. And I'm using the white right now to create some dots and circles and work around some of the patterns I had already created. I will also pull out the black, and I'm definitely going to order in some extra whites and blacks to have with me for art journaling and just keep a couple in my bag and things like that, because I do use them the most. But they also have these really bright colors in the pack too that you can use. And so up to this point I had done dots and kind of done some pattern work around other things that were already there. But now I'm creating a pattern from scratch at the bottom, and it's kind of like big bold stripes in black. And I just switch back and forth between the black and the white marker, and some are dots and some are lines and some are blobs, and it just kind of work on top of everything. And just adding in some fine details and really bringing out some of the patterns. And I want to add some white in between those black stripes down there. So I did heat dry it to make sure it was dry. Otherwise the wet black paint would mix into my wet white paint. And I didn't want that to happen. So I just made sure it was dry. And now as the white is drying while I'm working on other parts, I went back and added in some more layers because white is white and things will show through it. And there was a bright yellow background I was working on top of, and it needed a couple layers to really be stark white like the rest of my page. And now I'm using a fine liner, and this is the 20 gauge. This is the really thin one. And I'm just writing whatever I want. I mean, it's art journaling, and I'm kind of putting down my feelings or maybe something that I was thinking. And I really love circles, and so that's what I'm really working on here. Now there, I mimicked that stencil that was already there rather than writing around something. And that was a mark, that big black one, that was a mark from a spool. And so then I just sketched some lines on it. And you can use the fine liner to write or to sign your work or to create circles or even to splatter really small thin dots if you if you squeeze the bottle and then flick it towards your page. And inside the fine liner is the same thing that was inside the little bottle. And I picked this up from Donna Downey, so the fine liner, and it is one of the greatest things I've ever learned. I just can't put it down now. I just ordered some extra fine liners from her. So she's got fine liners on her website if you need them, and they come in a 2-pack bottle for 10, or 2-pack, 2 bottles in each pack for $10. It's totally affordable. Oh, and so inside that fine liner was golden fluid acrylic and then airbrush medium. And I just keep going back in, and you can see, like, I pick one thing up and do a little bit of work and then put some more in and do a little bit of work. And now I am putting in some heavy black circles inside my fine line circles, and it happens to be in the same area I had made those acrylic circles with my fingers earlier. I put in some black circles and then some white ones, and you can see the one on the bottom is like a big black circle, and then the ones on the top are small ones, and it's just preference and practicing and trying things out, and really that's it. Oh, I did get out the colored Posca, but I don't know if I used it. Yeah, see that hesitation? And this is 2 times the speed, so I hesitated twice as long. But yeah, so there, that's it. And I'll put up some more close-up shots. Here are those, and you can check that out. And thanks so much for joining me again for art journaling, and I'm excited to have you join us. And please join our Facebook group where everyone's sharing their things, both the physical students and the online students, and keep the conversation going, and let us know what you think. And if you have any questions, we're there to answer. Thank you.